Both friends and viewers have asked me, what's it like to tour the Kiss? Stay tuned and I'll tell you all about it. Welcome to this edition of the Gamble Ramble, and with you as always is myself, host, creator, producer, editor, one-man show, Glenn Archie Gamble. And for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, I am a 40-year career musician from London, Ontario, Canada, and I like to vlog about my extensive career and interview musician friends, some of which are well-known, some of which are just plain awesome, and talk about pop culture and music and rock and roll in general. So today's vlog is going to be a long one. I'm going to warn you up front. I'm very verbose. I like to speak. That's why it's called The Ramble. It's completely unscripted. But what I'm talking about today is the time that I toured with the band Kiss on the 1995 Kiss Kiss convention tour. Pardon me, because Kiss had an official convention tour that they put together and went out. Before this, myself and Alive had played at a bunch of fan conventions over the years, including one in New Jersey where we played with the great Ace Frehley, and one in Toronto where Ace jammed with us again for the second time. But I digress. 1 minute, 23 seconds in. Anyway, Kiss did a whack of dates on this convention tour. So what it was is basically their career was kind of, well, to be honest with you, if we're going to speak plainly, it had hit rock bottom, pun intended. They had put out an album called Carnival of Souls, and this was in the grunge era, and it didn't do well. And it was kind of a mediocre album. It was Kiss trying to be Alice in Chains. There's some good songs on it, but it just wasn't a good Kiss record. And it didn't catch on with the public. So they didn't bother to tour behind it because they would have been basically at that point, I think, playing clubs and theaters. This is a stadium band at one time, you know. So I believe Gene came up with the idea. He saw how successful these fan conventions were. Now, if you don't know, we'll establish this before we go further. What a fan convention is when fans of a certain type of thing, comic books, music, Star Trek, Star Wars, get together, rent out a space, and organize a convention, a gathering of other fans. And, you know, they can be anywhere from a local hotel ballroom to 25 Trekkies to, you know, Comic Cons, which go on in major cities for 4 days and attract tens of thousands of people. So the Kiss convention was Gene's baby. And basically what it was they carted out a bunch of stuff from storage. Costumes, guitars, stage pieces, drum kits, gold and platinum albums, contracts, rare things, merchandising, put them in plexiglass display cases, and put the costumes on mannequins and put them out on display. Then you would walk through like a traveling Kiss museum, and you got a program, I'll insert it here, and a pass with free ticket. Tickets were $100, which was unheard of at the time. The only band that had ever charged $100 was the Eagles. The Eagles breached the $100 tour ticket price for their Hell Freezes Over tour. So we have them to thank today for the exorbitant price of tickets because they were the first to push the boundaries of the market, and the market accepted it. Of course, the Eagles fans at that time were all accountants and lawyers, people that were in college when they were in, you know, Eagles were at their height in the 70s, right? Digression number 2. So anyway, yeah, Gene said, well, you know what? We'll charge $100, but we'll make it a day out. And I have to give them credit because not only was there the Kiss Museum, as I described, they would have a question and answer period with Kiss. Eric Singer did a drum clinic. Bruce Kulick did a guitar clinic. I don't know how that lasted all through the tour, but he did it for some of them for sure. Kiss themselves would usually close the show with an acoustic performance, which was amazing and was so successful, led to the release of their MTV Unplugged album. We'll get to that. And before the acoustic performance, they would try and have a Kiss tribute band play. and open for Kiss and recreate the 70s Kiss show with makeup and stuff. We weren't allowed to use pyro because most of these took place in hotel ballrooms, but we'll get to that. So yeah, Alive, the band I was in at the time, was known as the #1 Kiss tribute band of the world. There wasn't a lot of competition at the time. There weren't a lot of Kiss tribute bands around. There was Cold Gin from LA, and they also did a bunch of shows, and they were, consisted of Tommy Thayer, who is the present day guitarist in Kiss, and Jamie St. James, both from Black and Blue, who Gene and Paul had produced and written with, and they were, tight with the Kiss camp. In fact, Tommy was tour manager on this tour. So Spiro Papadopoulos, who played Gene Simmons in Alive from here in London, Ontario, he got poached by Cold Gin. One time they hired him. They had to do a Japanese tour. They had it booked. They didn't have a Gene. The Gene dropped out. So they borrowed Spiro. And then, of course, Spiro was now in 2 bands. And Cold Gin was very successful. And they had the luxury of being in Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world, and also being in tight with the Kiss camp. So they did some of the shows. We did some of the shows. I think Mr. Speed did some shows. I don't know the other bands, if I'm honest. If I can find the information, I will. Again, this is non-scripted. I've got my iPad with tour dates here to jog my memory of stories. So if I'm not mistaken, yeah, they did Australia first to test it out before they brought it to North America. And it was a huge success. And they're all sold out pretty much at $100 a ticket. So Paul Stanley later said in his autobiography they didn't make much money off of it, but it was fun and they considered it a success, And the fans loved it because it was a great day. And it really was great value for the dollar. Like $100 for a ticket in 1995 was a lot of money, but it wasn't the Eagles just coming out, singing about fucking you in the desert for an hour and then taking off to count the money. It was a full day, and it was cool because you were with other Kiss fans, and it felt great, like to be unified with other nerds like ourselves, right? It was awesome. I don't say that in a derogatory way. So, now I should quantify this statement. Now, when I say Alive played 9 shows, it wasn't always just strictly Alive. For 2 or 3 of the shows, our Paul Stanley, Dean Georgakopoulos, wasn't available. Now, Steve and Dean, their family owned a restaurant. They worked for their parents, so they were able to get time off. These weren't consecutive tour dates. Like, we'll fly into a weekend, fly home, go back out to Montreal, meet them, which I will explain as we progress. And at this point, Spiro was already basically working for Kiss. They hired him to work on the convention tour and play with Cold Gin and play with Alive. So he was doing triple duty. Tommy Thayer was doing double duty as tour manager and ace when Cold Gin played, right? So basically, there were a few shows, though, where the singer for Cold Gin, Anthony something, played with Alive. So it was me, Spiro, Gene, and Steve, Ace, me, Peter, and Anthony, Paul from Cold Gin for 2 or 3 shows of the 9 that I've described. So overall, though, Alive did more shows than anybody, and it was great. So I will start off by telling you the shows that we did. Now I'm going to get a little help here. So Salt Lake City was the first one. Now that was a combination of Spiro, Steve, and myself from Alive, and Anthony from Cold Gin. The same combination played. Well, we didn't do the next show. We traveled to Las Vegas where Cold Gin played. But because we were already out there, they flew us out to Southwestern America. We just traveled to the next city and hung out. We didn't do that show, but we were there. And then we did the show after it in Phoenix of that lineup. Again, Anthony from Cold Gin and the 3 guys from Alive. The tour went on. And then we went out and did Detroit as Alive. And then there was a Cleveland show, and then the tour came to Canada, so we did Toronto, Montreal. So then after the Montreal show, the tour went on to Boston, and there was another band that played in Boston. I don't know who it was, another Kiss tribute. And I was in a band at the time. It was called Buffalo Brothers. And you see that we were signed as Paleface, but we found out we got a cease and desist letter from Atlantic Records that there was an artist named Paleface, and we eventually changed our name to Buffalo Brothers. But that band had a record deal when I just signed a record deal, put an EP out when I took this tour, okay? So I had to fly home and do band business. I took the train home from Montreal, I believe. The guys went to Boston with the tour for the day off, and then I flew back after Boston to meet them in New York City, which was extremely eventful. We'll get to that. So then we did New York City, the Roseland Ballroom. Then we did Pittsburgh, which was the last show of the tour. Alive did that. Then we came home. And then Spiro went on to work with Kiss. And then they recorded MTV Unplugged as a capper. The tour was so successful that Alex Coletti from MTV rather, came and saw it, heard about it. I think he came to the New York show. And Kiss sounded great. And he offered them an MTV Unplugged based on the strength of this. So let's go backtrack and start from the beginning, now that you know the dates. You might be doing the math and going, well, that's not 9. It is Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Detroit, Toronto, Montreal, New York, Pittsburgh. Okay, it's 7, but we were at 9. So Las Vegas, we were present, 3 of us. But we didn't play because Cold Jim played. In Boston, we were present, but I wasn't there and another band played. So Alive was involved. Members of Alive were involved with 9 conventions, but we played at 7. Still more than anyone else. So we'll go back to the beginning. Kiss had done this originally in March of 95 in Australia. Okay, and they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dates. Okay, and pardon me, not March, February of Australia. February of 95 in Australia. So I'm a bit dyslexic. I actually am, by the way, but I digress. So, in February of 1995, Kiss did 5 shows in Australia to kind of beta test the concept. And they were all sold out and it did great. So they decided to bring it to America, which they did, starting with Los Angeles, and that was in June of 1995, 4 months later. February, March, April, May, June. Yeah, 4 or 5 months later. Now, Peter Criss appeared, coincidentally, at that convention. I got him and sang Hard Luck Woman with the band. It was a huge success. So once they knew they were going to do a North American tour with this, we were contacted. Now, here's the thing with the Ramble. If you're new here, you'll find out that I tell all sides of the story, good and bad, because I can't stand when people vlog and just pimp themselves about all the great shit they do, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be honest and talk about the good and the bad, okay? Because there was, nothing's ever all good. So it started with a phone call. We got a phone call from a woman named Shelley Berggren, I believe was her last name. I love Shelley. She's fantastic. She had just started working for Kiss as an assistant at the time. Kiss were basically self-managed because, as I said, Carnival of Souls had tanked. They, Gene and Paul were basically running things, and she was doing, clerical stuff and light assistant duties and things like that. So she was really eager to make a good impression. So in Alive, I was a sideman, okay, which means that I had my other band, as I said, had signed a record deal. We're just waiting the release of the album. But I played with Alive for fun, but also for money on the side. I was a working musician. Those 3 owned the company. The other 3 guys owned the business Alive, and they paid me as a sideman, a fee. So Shelley contacted us and said, Kiss wants you to come out and do some dates on the convention tour, okay? We'll cover your expenses, but it doesn't pay. Now, it's typical Gene and Paul, really. I mean, they're smart businessmen. But let's face it, the 4 of us were huge Kiss fans. They knew this. And we said, well, let's see if we can make it work. So basically, the way it worked was we crunched the numbers on our end. They paid for flying us out. They paid for us driving out, renting a trailer, gas. Meals were provided by the tour, per diems, on and off. We'll get to that. So in figuring this out, I'm talking to Steve and the Alive guys, and I said, well, look, I don't want you guys to have to pay for me out of pocket, but I can't do this for free. Like, I don't have a job like you guys do. They all did. Spiro was working for KISS essentially at that point. Steve and Dean worked for the parents' restaurant. They had financial flexibility, and they lived at home. I didn't. I was out in the world. I was out on the streets with an apartment, rent to pay for, and bills to pay. I said, I can give you a break on my fee because I want to do this. You know, I'll do it for like $100 a show or something, but I can't miss paying gigs and have it cost me money as much as I want to do this. As a fan, it's not possible. So I said, just tell Shelly that that's the case and put that in the budget and an expense, because it is a legitimate expense. We also took out a road crew guy, which is a legitimate expense. Now, I don't want to speak badly of Shelly, but if I'm honest with you, she really got her back up about this. She was trying to keep expenses down because she wanted to be able to go to Gina Paul and say, look what a good job I did. And look how little it's going to cost you. And I understand that. She's trying to make a good impression. She's a professional. But she said, well, we're not paying you. And I said, well, it's not like you're asking. I understand that the bands are getting paid. But I'm not an owner of the business in the band. I'm an employee. It's an expense. I have to. I'd love to do it for free, go towards KISS for the summer, but I can't afford it. And she came back at me with, if you don't do it, we'll just get Jamie St. James to do it from a Cold Gin. And that really upset me and made me angry. I also laughed at her. I said, I doubt Jamie's doing these shows for free, first of all, which I don't believe he did to this day. In fact, I know he didn't, but anyway. And even if he did, it was Vegas and LA. I think they only did 2 shows, Cold Gin. So, you know, I'm sure KISS took good care of him, being a friend. He asked me to go out, fly out for weekends a couple times and drive all these distances for free. I can't do it, Shelly. You know, I just can't do it. And she started, you know, she was really brisk with me. And if I'm going to paint an accurate picture, she was rude with me. And we got to do a screaming match on the phone. I finally told her to go fuck herself. I said, fine, I don't care. I want to do this, but I'm not fucking doing it for free. I can't. I'm not being a prick, you know. So anyway, it got resolved. And if I'm perfectly honest, which I'll try to be, I can't recall how we resolved it, if the guys from Alive paid for it out of the business or if KISS covered it. And I think I don't remember exactly what I got paid, but I'm pretty sure I took a reduced fee to make it work. Because I wasn't being greedy. Of course I'd love to spend the summer touring with KISS. You kidding me? But anyway, so that said, it was set in stone. So then we got the dates. Then we got a call. The first date was, as I said, Salt Lake City, Utah, on June 20th of 1995. No, sorry, June 22nd, 1995. So it was supposed to be Cold Gin. I think. They couldn't do it for some reason. So they put a composite together, having promised Cold Gin the date. Anthony was the only one that was available. The singer for Cold Gin, the Paul Stanley. So they flew Steve and I out because Spiro was already working on the tour. And I guess rather than use Spiro, like Cold Gin, like Spiro, Tommy Thayer, and Anthony and myself, they just decided to go half and half. So it was basically Spiro from Cold Gin, Anthony from Cold Gin, and Steve and I from Alive, even though Spiro was in both. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, we flew out for that weekend of shows. It was fantastic. I mean, you know, it was all of, you know, KISS, it was low budget, right? KISS didn't have much money at that point. It's like Southwest Airlines, whatever. We flew out from Detroit. But it was great to be there, you know. Steve and I got in the night before. And they put us up at a motel. It was nice, though, like a nice motel, you know. And I said with Steve, I think it was a Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check the calendar, but I'm going, this is a Mormon town. There's probably not much to do. But I look up in the news, I think the newspaper or whatever, and there's a strip club, and it's open. And I said, Steve, you know what? Let's go for a beer. Kind of pumped, you know, out of town. We're going to be playing with KISS the next day. So we get a cab, and I think we might have worn our laminates, our band tour laminates. I think we got them when we arrived or at the hotel or something. I don't 100% recall, which is kind of a cheesy thing to do, but at the same time, we were so excited, But don't hold me to that. But the point being that once we got to the strip club, we were sitting at the bar and we got talking to the bartender about the tour. We were telling him what we were doing, and somebody's going, oh, cool, And then he goes and serves some customers, and he comes back, and he goes, hey, we just got a phone call. It was some guy named Andre calling to ask if the club was open and if we could put a table aside for Kiss. We said, really? He goes, yeah, they're on their way. So sure enough, 15, 20, half hour later, in walks Andre, Kiss's bodyguard. If you know Andre, huge fucking guy, used to be NFL player, retired NFL. Eric Singer and Gene Simmons. And Gene Simmons has got this incredibly large-breasted woman on his arm. It's like bringing lobsters to Maine, but he brought this woman with him to the strip club. We found out later she was from LA. And there's a whole other story with that, but I won't get into it. So they walk in, and we see them, the bar manager's over fussing over them and takes them to a table and gets them comfortable. And we wait a few minutes, and the doorman comes over to the bar. Everyone's excited. If you're ever at a public place where a celebrity shows up, you know that feeling that's in the air. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, excuse me. I think I showed him the laminate. I said, we're part of the Kiss tour. Could you please let Gene know that the guys from Alive are here? Two of the guys from Alive are here, and we wanted to say hello. He goes, sure. So I see him walk over to Gene's and Eric's table, taps Gene on the shoulder, whispers in his ear, and Gene sits up straight, looking around. And he sees us, and he goes, the Gene Simmons look, like, yeah. So we went over. Said, hey, Gene, didn't want to bother you. We just wanted to say hi. He says, no, please sit down. So Steve and I took a seat at the table, and it was great. I've met all the original members of Kiss a number of times, a lot of Kiss members over the years, but the original 4. And Gene can be funny, sweet, kind, generous. Most of the time he is. It depends where he is and if his guard's down and if he's in a good mood. And he was in a great mood. He had, this woman with him, and the girls are flocking all over him, offering to buy us drinks. Do you want a beer? Do you want a drink? And I think I just ordered a Coke out of, I didn't want to, he doesn't drink, and I honored that. I didn't want to be ordering beers on his tab. I was talking with Eric Singer a little bit about drums. And this girl, the women come over and they're, doing whatever, right? As a strip clubs, the woman will exaggerate whatever part of her body is her best feature. If she's got great tits, she'll stick her tits out. If she's got a great ass, she'll stick her ass out. They're all doing this around Gene because he's wealthy and successful. And Gene says, sees me look at it one, and he goes, would you like a dance? I'll buy you a dance. I said, no, that's okay. And later on in the tour, we took Eric to a strip club in Montreal, and I bought him a dance, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. It's going to be a long one, folks. But if you want to hear it, I'll put it into a series, perhaps. So back to, digression number, I've lost count. Back to the story at hand. So we're in the strip club. Yeah, Gene's amazing. He's, telling jokes and laughing, having a good time. So on something like this, I've been around enough and toured with enough big bands, open for them, to know you have to be cool. You have to be professional and maintain a bit of professionalism. And Kiss is my ultimate favorite band in terms of from childhood till now. So I said to Gene at one point, I go, Gene, after we're comfortable, we've been there sitting there for about an hour. I go, Gene, I've got to ask, can I have one Kiss fan question? And he laughed. He goes, go ahead. And I said, is that really Peter Criss on side 4 of Alive 2? Specifically larger than life? Like, come on. And he said to me, he goes, believe it or not, that's Peter Criss. It's exactly what he said to me verbatim. I said, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, it's one of his best drum tracks, And we both agreed. Peter played like John Bonham on that. It was amazing. Because for years I thought it was Anton Fig, right? And, so yeah, it was just making jokes and having a good time. And then they got up and left, or we got up and left, I can't remember. But back to the hotel. We got back to the hotel, and there's video footage that Steve has. If I can get a hold of it someday, I'll share it with you guys. We were back at the hotel filming each other, talking about it. Because, I was a lot younger at the time, right? A long time ago. And it was still pretty exciting, We were pumped out, hanging out with Kiss. Like, we'd met them before, but to hang out with Gene Simmons for a couple of hours. And even Eric Singer was cool. And so the next day comes, and we take a cab over to the venue. And we're introduced to Anthony, and he'd flown in from L.A., and we're walking around as they're setting up the displays. And this is only, like a couple dates into the tour. We're what? Wow, look at that. 1, 2, 3. It's the 4th date of the tour. So they're still figuring out, where things should go, the right placement, stuff like that. And it was so cool to be able to see this stuff as it was in the road cases being taken out. Now, there's some great stories coming up about that. I got to set up Peter's drum kit. Coming up shortly. Anyway, that's not a digression. It's part of the story. So, yeah, it was really cool to wander around and be able to touch the stuff because we were able to, see it before it was encased in plexiglass in the display cases. And then there was a rental drum kit because we'd flown in rental amps, rental backline provided. Just like, I'm trying to remember the name of the company. But it's like a 5-piece kit, 10-inch, 12-inch rock tom, 16-inch floor tom, kick snare, like PDP or something. No, Mapex. It was Mapex. It was the first time I'd ever played Mapex. It sounded really good. But it wasn't very Kiss-like, but whatever. Alive, we obviously didn't fly in with the drums and amps. It's way too expensive. Steve, I believe, might have used Bruce's Marshall. Bruce had a Marshall he used for his guitar clinic, and then they wheeled it off stage for the acoustic performance. I believe that Steve used that. So Eric Singer's drums are set up behind me. I can't remember that, actually. I should correct myself. I don't know if we have full stage or not. I honestly can't remember. I'm drawing a blank. But I played this drum kit. So we did a quick sound check. And again, if I'm being honest, Anthony was a little bit... Anthony had been inside, I think he was in a band called Cold Sweat. He had been in a band that was signed with Ferrari, one of those late 80s LA bands that got a record deal, but grunge swept away. So he was being a bit of a rock star with us. Even with us, the guys we were going to be playing with him, right? And once he heard us play, I remember his attitude completely changed, right? And it was great. So we went down and got ready. And did the show. And played really well. Everybody played good, and we gelled really good. And Anthony did a great job. It was really fun, And then came off stage, took off the makeup, and got to stand side stage and watch Kiss do the Unplugged show. And it was incredible. They were so good. They were so tight. The harmonies, that version of Kiss was musically the best one, in my opinion. I got it. Oh, due respect to Eric Carr, that version was great too. But they did stuff like See You Tonight, and here's a funny nugget. They did a country version of God of Thunder, which was something that was spontaneous but not spontaneous because they did it every night. But I was at the side of the stage, and when they started playing this country version of You Got Something About You, right? I shouted, yeah! And Gene sat up in the chair and looked around. The next show, and every show after that, Gene threw in the yeehaw. And every show I saw. He took my idea in the spot where I did it and did it. Stupid little thing, I know, but 100% true. Another thing I remember about that show that drove me crazy was they broke into Any Way You Want It. The Dave Clark 5 cover they did on side 4 of Alive 2. And Eric Singer didn't know it. So Gene, Paul, and Eric are playing it. And Eric's just sitting there, going, shaking his head. I'm looking at it, I'm going, 4-4. Because that's all it is 4 on the floor driving beat. He's shrugging at me. I was this close to going up, pushing him off the throne, grabbing the sticks. I wanted to go up and say, let me play it. And in retrospect, I should have, because I've learned in life, if you don't ask, you don't get. But anyway, they did it without Eric. If you watch the video of the show, they did it, or most of it, or a couple verses, whatever, without Eric. But I'm at the start of the stage. So anyway, yeah, it was a great night. You know, we had a really good time. We got to hang out with a little bit with Kiss and the catering and backstage and stuff. So then the next day, we flew to Las Vegas. Now, we were there, if I'm not mistaken, for 2 days. Let me just check the calendar here. Salt Lake City was the 6th. No, 22nd, sorry, of the 6th month. You guys, Americans do your calendar backwards than the Canadians. We do, you do day, month, year. We do month, day, year. 22nd was Salt Lake City. The 23rd, we flew into Vegas, and the show was in Vegas the 24th. So we flew out the next morning and saw Kiss. We were at the airport. And actually, we were on the same flight. I'll be honest with you, I can't recall if it's the flight from Salt Lake City to Vegas or Vegas to Phoenix. But we were on one of those flights with Kiss, the same flight. Vegas to Phoenix. I remember why, because we were at the Salt Lake City airport. And we were standing at our gate, and an airport worker in a blue jumpsuit comes up to us, and he goes, "Hey, man, are you guys in Alive? The Kiss band that played?" I said, "Yeah." He opens his shirt. He's got a convention shirt on. He goes, "I was at the show yesterday. You guys were great." We're like, "Thanks a lot, man." He goes, "Hey, Kiss is 3 gates over, waiting for their flight." So Steve and I went over, and they welcomed us, hey, hugs, and went over and hung out with them while they waited for the flight, which was pretty cool, too. Hey, guys, it's literally 3:50 in the morning. I'm in my pajamas and lying on my couch editing this video, and I just remembered, it just came to me, standing in the airport with Kiss was the first time that I had noticed Paul Stanley's ear. And I'll tell you this, not in a derogatory way. As most fans know, Paul was born with only one actual ear and no ear canal on his right side. And I used to wear a hearing aid in my left ear, so Paul had his hair tied back in the airport, and I had my hair tucked in a baseball hat, and he was standing to my left, and I could feel him. He was able to see my hearing aid sticking out of the baseball hat. And I turned to look at him looking at me, and I could see his right ear for the first time and noticed that he didn't actually have one. He had had reconstructive surgery, and there was no ear hole. So just a small little thing, but I just remembered it now at 10 to 4 in the morning. Back to the story. So then we got our flight. We flew to Vegas. And as I said, we were there for 2 days, and we didn't have to play. So Kiss put us up, and now, I remember being at setup, going into the catering, bringing in food for the crew and the band. And I remember grabbing a hot meal. And someone who will remain nameless in the crew looked at me and said, "You shouldn't be eating that." I said, "I'm part of the tour. I'm here basically for free. I didn't get paid for Vegas, right? But I went anyway. It cost me money to go." And then I'll never forget this. The drum tech for the tour, Kenny, who's since passed away, Kenny Barr, a great guy. He's got a book out, by the way. If you look for it on Amazon, if I can find it, I'll put it here. I've read it. It's really good. Kenny died far too young, but he was a really nice guy. He was a guitar and drum tech, bass tech. So he was working as Eric Singer's tech on this tour. And he comes over when that person leaves and goes, "Listen, don't fucking listen to him. You're part of the tour. You're working. Eat as much as you want," right? I tell this story because in the Kiss universe, there are people that they do so much in the band's name that the band's unaware of because they want to score points with the band. Save money, right some supposed wrong that they thought, you know what I mean? And so this person was like, "You shouldn't be eating that, man, it's for tour staff." I'm like, "I'm on the tour. I'm here at Kiss's invitation." So anyway, it's a small thing, but see, I tell it all, good and bad. So yeah, that show was really cool. The night, I can't remember what we did the night before. We went out to a strip club with Kiss. I think it was the Olympic Garden, which is across the street from the Hard Rock Hotel. Or in that area, if I'm not mistaken. But we went there. Watched Paul Stanley have a couple highballs. And this girl was dancing on a small stage for him to Love Gun. I'll never forget that. I think, what a rock star, And same thing, they were generous with their time, and we sat with them and hung out. It was great. And the convention itself took place at the Sahara, and we also stayed there. So, come convention day, Paul Stanley's wife flew in with Evan, his son Evan, who was an infant at the time, and got to meet Pam Bowen, that was her name, Pam Stanley. I never forget running into them outside the elevator. Like, yeah, we got off the elevators and they were getting on the day of the show. And Paul, away from Kiss or away from fans, is a completely different person. He's very soft-spoken, very friendly, you know, but he's Paul Stanley when there's fans around. And he was like, oh, guys, this is my wife, Pam, and my son, Evan, you know. I'd like to introduce you. It was really cool, really nice. And Evan was a really cute baby, you know. All babies are cute, but, you know. So it was nice to meet her. She was friendly, you know, and they did the show, and it was great to watch. You know, we were watching from the side of the stage. We had all access passes, right? A couple got married during Kiss's performance, and Cold Jim played, and they were great. You know, Jamie St. James is a great singer. He's a good drummer too. He did a really good Peter Criss impersonation. He played like Peter, I thought. I think I do as well, but I think a lot of guys don't. They play the parts, but they don't have the feel, the swing, right? If I can say so, I believe I do, and I believe Jamie does. And so, yeah, it was great. You know, just hanging around. Steve and I were just hanging around, having a good time, having a couple of beers, watching the show. And then afterwards, we hung out with Kiss in the casino. They went to a section, small box section of the casino where there weren't a lot of people. And I was sitting next to Paul Stanley when we were playing nickel slots. And he kept winning. And I kept losing. And I was like, fucking, I go up to him. And finally I go, he wants to know, you know, hey, Bruce, I just won $200, whatever, right? Literally, that was the conversation. I was shaking my head. I go, life's been pretty good to you, eh? He goes, yeah, tell me about it. And so there you go. So that was Vegas. I don't remember anything. I do remember one thing. When Kiss was playing the acoustic show, this was really cute. Pam Stanley was standing next to me and Steve at the side of the stage, and she had Evan in her arms. And he was trying to wriggle out of her arms, and she put him down. He tried to crawl across the stage to his daddy. So, Evan, if you ever get the chance to see this, I'm sure you don't remember it, but you were trying to get on stage even at that age, even as a toddler. You weren't afraid of the crowd, the noise, or anything. You were a real rock and roll baby. You were trying to crawl across the stage to your dad. It was so cute. They had been trying to figure out how to get us from Salt Lake to Vegas, okay? And I said to Shelley, put us on the crew bus. There was a crew tour bus, and there was literally only 4-man crew. Kenny Barr, Spike doing guitars, there was a merch person, Tommy. Tommy traveled with the band, and they flew. And what was his name? Doing sound and PA. Session drummer. I played on a lot of Cinderella stuff, whatever. Kevin Valentine. So there was tons of room on the bus. This bus is huge, and there's only like 5 or 6 people on it. Shelley's like, honey, it doesn't work that way. I said, Shelley, I've been in the music industry for years. No, we're going to fly you in. You can't intrude on the crew like that with strangers on their bus. And we're like, oh, look, Gina Paul knew they would want to save money on a bus they're already renting for an overnight, put us on. So they flew us, which is fine, okay? So I'm telling the story for a reason, because we get to the airport and we see Gina Paul and Eric and Bruce. And now I think Tommy and Spiro, too, were on the bus as well. And Andre was traveling with the band. But still, there was plenty of room on the bus. And Gene goes, what are you doing here? I said, well, you're flying us to Vegas. He goes, why are you on the tour bus? And I said, good question. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I suggested to Shelley when she was trying to figure out how to get us. Because I do logistics for my band and road manage typically, right? We were all put on the bus. That's what it was. Gene saw the money being wasted flying us everywhere, and he said, put them on the bus. And we got on the bus that night. It was an overnight. So that's what it was. After the show, we hung out with Kiss a little bit. We had a few hours while the crew loaded and stuff, and we gambled with Kiss. We got on the bus with the crew. And I remember, because I slept in the back lounge, all the bunks were full. They had it rigged. You can rig out tour buses for 6, 8, 12 bucks, depending on the size of the tour. And I slept in the back lounge, which I was more than happy to do. I'll never forget peeking out the blinds, going over the Hoover Dam. And it was late at night. It was awesome. So we got to Phoenix the next morning. We wake up, we're in the parking lot of the hotel, and the Phoenix convention was at the Hyatt Regency, and we were staying there as well. So it's like 8 a.m. or something, right? And peek out the window, and bright sunshine. I go back to sleep. Tommy comes on the bus. Tommy Thayer in road manager mode, and he says, "Guys, listen. Do you want to make some money?" I said, "Sure." Because the local loaders didn't show up, and we need some help loading stuff in, setting up. Steve and I said, "Sure." It's like $10 an hour cash or something, right? So we'll do it. I never got paid, by the way, but anyway, that's a whole other story. So we get off the bus, and I'll never forget this because you step off the bus, dry heat hits you like a fucking punch in the face, right? It hurts physically coming from a cool air-conditioned bus, right? So we help load the stuff in, and we help set it up. And I got to set up Peter Criss's live drum kit, the Mirror Ball kit. And I have a picture of me with him, and I can find it, I'll put it in here. I said to Kenny Barr, Kenny has a busy day. Kenny had to set up the drum displays, which was Peter's full alive drum kit, some of Eric Carr's drum pieces. He had to set up 2 setups for Eric Singer. The convention, the drum clinic setup, which was Eric's full concert setup, double kick, tom, 2 racks, 2 floors, and then scaled down acoustic unplugged show kit, which was 1 kick, 2 racks, 10, 12, and a floor tom. I think 1 floor tom or 2, I can't recall. So he had his hands full. I said, Kenny, will you trust me with this? I know this kit backwards. I took a picture, and I said, I'll use a picture, and I'll make sure it's proper. He goes, yeah, dude, you'd be helping me out. So I got to set up the Alive drum kit. I was in my hands. You guys know, you're fans like me, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. It was unbelievable. It was so cool. To open that case and smell, you know what I'm talking about? All the factory scents is one of our strongest. It just smelled like 1975 in a good way. I took them out and I was like, oh my God, I'm touching the drums that I wanted. They weren't on the Alive album cover, but they were done. They were from the Alive tour, the Mirror Ball kit. And I set them up to the best of my ability, reproduced Peter's setup. I must have done a good job. Kenny let me help again. But it was so cool because Steve got to do that in a similar capacity. He got to help with guitars and stuff, right? We're touching totems of our childhood, right? It was so amazing. I had the Alive drums in my hand. The funny thing was that they threw the Alive tour drums. They threw the hardware away. I remember Spiro telling me while I was setting up, it was all brand new single brace pearl hardware. They recreated it. I go, where's the hardware, the original hardware? He goes, oh, when we took it out of the case, it was moldy. So we threw it away. And I was like, what? You could have put on a face mask and cleaned it, right? They just threw it in a dumpster. So Kiss fans, there you go, ultimate dumpster dive. If you hadn't been around back then, they threw a bunch of stuff out from the warehouse. So we set it up, and it was a great thing. And then went back out. We got our rooms, went upstairs and had a nap because it was a long day, early morning, right? I'll never forget leaving to go. Had a couple hours to kill this. I used to go check out pawn shops for gear and stuff, walk around. Leaving the hotel, and that experience of you leaving in an air-conditioned lobby into a vestibule that's got water spraying down, you know, like jet water streams spray. And then out of that, into like breath-stopping, you know, dry heat. But I love it. It's a beautiful city. So I came back and we did the show, and it was the combination platter. It was the combo platter of Anthony from Cold Gin. And I think Anthony had rented a car and drove. Because he didn't, or he might have flown, but he wasn't, I don't think he was on the tour bus with us. Anyway, we did the show with Anthony, the lineup of Anthony, Spiro, me, and Steve again. Now, what do I remember about that show? I honestly don't remember anything eventful about it. We did the show. Went well. It was fun. Presuming we hung out with Kiss a little afterwards. I don't recall, if I'm honest. And then we flew back to Detroit the next day. Detroit is the nearest American city to where we live, in London, Ontario, Canada, which is 2 hours from Toronto and 2 hours from Detroit. We're right in the middle. So sometimes it's easier and cheaper to drive to Detroit and fly out of there instead of Toronto. That's what we did.